Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we are talking about the grand final for the Berlin Majors. So there was just one match left to be played, and it was this one, and what a match it was. I think this might be the most exciting match of Siege that's ever been played. SSG versus NiP at SI 2020 is pretty good, and of course there's the ultra classic Evil Geniuses versus Penta at SI 2018, which is sort of the classic Siege match. But I mean that's getting a bit outdated. It's like 4 years old, so I mean, for legacy value maybe, but just in terms of the quality of Siege and how close everything was, I think this one might even take the cake. That's sort of up for you guys to debate in the comments if you feel so inclined. And the biggest thing that one has going forward, of course, was the reverse 3-0 when Evil Geniuses was up 2 maps, and then Penta sort of surged back. But again, I think because of all the goodness that comes from modern Siege versus ancient Siege, I think this is probably the one to watch anymore. But yeah, if you haven't watched it, definitely go back and watch it. If you were just like, oh, I'll just get the highlights or whatever, yeah, no, go watch this match. It's a really long one, but I guess if you go back and watch it, you can skip through downtime and whatever. But yeah, crazy match. Must watch match. And okay, so coming into it, I guess let me show you the one thing I wanted to say at the beginning. Yeah, comment below. I'm curious to hear who you guys were most impressed by at this event. I'm talking particularly players. Feel free to say teams if you want. And I'm also inclined for you to not say Spoit, because I think that's the very, very obvious answer. If you want to talk about Spoit, feel free. But what other players other than Spoit were you the most impressed with, I guess, based on your expectation versus how they actually performed? So feel free to leave that below. I would be interested to hear that. And yeah, about 75%, about 3/4 of voters in favor of Rogue. And I don't think that's correct objectively at all. They won by such a slim margin. And I feel like FaZe, if you were being totally objective, felt like the favorites coming into it. But because Rogue was playing with the crowds at their back, playing on EU soil, I feel like they had a notable advantage in that regard, and it was enough to make up for the maybe perceived advantage FaZe had in other regards. So we play on Border, Villa, Skyscraper, Bank, and Clubhouse. We play a total of 68 rounds, making this, I believe, the longest match of Siege ever played. And the really old ones have a disadvantage of, it's first to 7 nowadays. Used to be first to 5, first to 6, whatever. But now you can play up to 15 rounds with max overtime. And there were previous majors and events and whatnot that had infinite overtime. I think a bit of a tragedy that this event didn't. I understand time concerns, and if all 3 maps had infinite overtime, and well, they could have maybe just done the last one, that would have worked out, I guess, as well. But if all of the maps have infinite overtime, this could have been an insane series. And I don't know, only one match on the day. It just feels like it would have been good to include. Seems strange that they didn't, by way of butterfly effect. Maybe if this had gone 20 rounds or something, maybe one of the teams would have got tuckered out, and we wouldn't have actually seen overtime on one of these. But that's a lot of conjecture, so we won't even talk about that too much. In terms of the maps that we got to see, I think this is a pretty good mix. Of course, this is a lot more exciting than if we saw Clubhouse, Villa, Oregon, Theme Park, and Cafe or something. We saw a few different styles of maps. Clubhouse, the just sort of ultra classic, the Siege map. And it's turning a little bit. This was very even in terms of attackers and defenders. 8 rounds to the attackers, 7 to the defenders. In the past, it was very defender-sided, and now it's leaning more towards the attack, so it's dynamic, I suppose, in that way, if you're talking about the grand scheme of things. Bank is a pretty exciting one to watch. Usually an really attacker-favored map, but only 5 of the 12 rounds going to the attackers. Interesting to note there. Border, generally a pretty attacker-sided map as well. I think in, LATAM, it's very defender-sided, but here a pretty even split. And then on Villa, we had a surprise there. Usually one of the most defender-favored maps, but more attacker-favored. 7 of the 11 rounds going to the attackers. And then Skyscraper, usually defender-sided, and it, in fact, was very defender-sided. 12 of the 15 rounds going to the defenders. And there was a bit of a battle back on this one, I think, as well. Rogue were up 6-3, or they were up 5-1, and then they were up 6-3, and then FaZe brought it to overtime, and then FaZe won the map. And I think you especially have to give Rogue credit that wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. They lost round 15 here. They lost round 15 here. If they'd won both round 15s, they would have 3-0'd. If they'd won, either of them, they would have been up 2-1. Instead, they had to win the final 2 maps, and they did so. And so, in very impressive fashion, I suppose. Better for the viewers to have it close, but I'm sure their hearts were pounding. You know, they had to win both maps, and they were both close maps. So that's that. Let's take a look at the stats, and this isn't something you see too often. The very, very tight clustering of pretty much all stats, like the cost, the entry, the KD, the rating, everything. If you ignore Cameraman's KD, everyone is within ±4, and I guess even between +4 and -2. So everyone within a 6-point differential, or a 6-point range as far as differential goes. The ratings, everyone between, again, if you ignore Cameraman, everyone between 1.07 and 0.93, so just plus minus 0.07. The entry, most players between plus and -4, except for Cyber, sort of the outlier here. Spoit didn't get as many, but he's on actual 2.0 ratio. Cyber almost on the 2.0. Do note that Cyber 56 kills here. That's actually not that many. If you look at the KPR, 0.82 is still a solid KPR, but he hit 57 kills in the Sweden Major Grand Final, which is still, I believe, the kill record in general, and he almost matched it, but again, way more rounds played here than there. His survival pretty low. There are some disparities in plants and clutches. Twice as many plants coming out from FaZe, 10 versus the 5 from Rogue, and there are way more clutches coming out from Rogue, 6 to FaZe's 1. I think that is the difference maker. DPEC ended up being the MVP, and I think you could see why. I mean, the highest rating, not by a massive margin, but the 3 clutches, one of them was a 1v4, one was a 1v3, the other one might have just been a 1v1, I don't recall. But anyways, those two big clutches coming in, well, clutch, I guess, for lack of a better word. Yeah, he went pretty massive, all things considered. This is their like hard support player, and I guess Leon maybe playing the ace, but he's also playing some Alibi. It is actually their 2 support players on top of the team, and you love to see that kind of thing. Not that these 3 like underperformed per se. You generally expect them to be on top because of the roles that they play, but it's not like they missed out. It just was the support players going big in the end. And okay, so let's just talk about some of the players. Yeah, Cyber. Probably the best player throughout the tournament overall. Let me just glance at the stats here. He is still top six. Yeah, he just missed out, but Laxing, Grixer, and Pino all eliminated in group. Citizen out in the quarterfinals, Fantasy out in the quarterfinals. He made it all the way to the grand final. Look how many kills he has. I believe this is the most kills ever in an event. He beat his own record by, I don't know, just a handful of kills, but just look at these stats. So yeah, that's Cyber. He didn't get awarded MVP because, well, he lost. But one round goes differently, and they would have won. So unfortunate for them. Bullet wasn't phenomenal this event. He had one really good series, I think the W7M one, but he went, he did pretty well in this series, all things considered. Not that anybody did especially well or especially bad. And then Astro, I think he continues to be impressive. One of the ultra veterans of the game. Him and Cameraman have been playing together forever, and well, they have wins under their belt, they have deep runs under their belt, and I mean, they just continue to be good with this roster, with their old rosters, and yeah, just they continue to keep trucking on. Astro now is the IGL, taking it away from Cameraman, so maybe a concern going forward if Cameraman continues to put up the worst stats on the team and is not the IGL, but for now, I don't think that's like anything that really needs to be discussed much. And then finally we have Souls, the clutch overlord, who did not actually get any 1vx's, any clutches in this series. I think probably he has a pretty good argument for being the best support player in the world at the moment. And then on Rogue, I mean, maybe if you're talking about the best support players, yeah, DPEC and Leon, the 2 highest rated players in the lobby, were the 2 support players from Rogue. And then Spoit, not phenomenal here, and he fell off a little bit. He definitely did better, I think, in groups than he did in bracket, but still a very, very impressive showing, the debut for him. And I think this makes him the youngest major winner of all time. I think maybe a couple players have won events younger than him, like Dan and I think even Kanto, but those weren't actual majors, right? If we're talking about majors, it's well, of course, there's this one, there's Charlotte, there's Sweden, Mexico, Rally, and Paris, I believe. And so there are now 6 teams that have won a major, and only one player has won 2 majors, and that is Kanto Raketti. He won the first one with G2, and then he's won this one, the most recent one. And then finally, the only guy I didn't mention is Cryan, and maybe living in the shadow of Spoit a tiny bit at this event, but he did very well in his own right, and living in his shadow is funny because he's just like a really big guy, right? But okay, so yeah, that does it for everybody. Again, Kanto Raketti, the first 2-time major champion, and Spoit now the youngest major winner, and Rogue the first EU team to win an international event in quite some, in like I think I saw like 1,000 days or something since Na'Vi won Pro League Season 10, I believe it was. And okay, I think that pretty much does it. I'm just going to quickly glance at this. I'm not even going to scroll through it. You can feel free to go to CGG. The reason I scroll through the other ones is for, you know, posterity. They get replaced after each day, but this one will be here for perpetuity. So feel free to go to CGG, check it out, and you know, I guess I'll just move past it. The final thing I wanted to talk about was my fantasy draft, and I'm just going to say really quickly how I did. I did okay. I got 24th place out of 67, and this is actually the guy who got me into the thing, so rough showing for him. And just as far as my players went, I had Grixer, who was a letdown in the way that he didn't make it out of groups, couldn't have got me more points, but he got a lot of points in group. Pretty good pickup, I'd say, overall. Tyrant was a bit of a wild card pick. He was super cheap, and I think he got, on rate, he was okay. Would have liked to have seen him do a little bit better. Herds was a pretty solid value pick, making it all the way to the semifinals. Barely outperforming Grixer, even though he played 2 more matches than him. But again, as a value pick, I thought he was quite good. And then I had Spirits, who I would have liked him to have done a little bit better. His team made it to the semifinals, and I did designate him as my entry player, but I can't really say he underperformed too much. Also sort of a budget pick. And then Forrest, I mean, definitely the biggest letdown of my draft. He's one of the most expensive players, and I designated him as my support. And I mean, not the worst Astralis player by any means. I think Iconic did worse, and certainly Shuttle did worse. Pretty brutal. I think 5 players went negative overall. It was like Rin, Coded, Shuttle, Super, and Kansan. So I mean, you would have just rather not have those players at all than have them, but it is what it is. And okay, so that's my draft. I think they're doing something like this for NAL, and I'm not sure if it's week by week or if it's like play day by play day. I think they'll announce the details soon enough, and maybe I might get a video on it. We'll see how things are looking. But okay, so that's it. That was my coverage for the major. Again, comment below what players you were the most impressed by. If you have anything else to comment, feel free to leave them below as well. Questions, comments, concerns, corrections, requests, whatever. And also a like and a subscription would be appreciated. And I will catch you guys in the next video.